For those of you just joining us, there has been a surprise twist to the crisis in Syria. Syrian officials reportedly agreeing to a Russian plan to turn over its chemical weapons. It's a plan that has many in Washington and beyond hoping that a U.S. military strike on Syria could be avoided. Right now, there is a House Armed Services Committee going on, and we just heard testimony from the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. This is the Joint Chiefs Chair, General Martin Dempsey, talking now. And they did mention this plan of Syria turning over its chemical weapons, and we want to talk about that with our CNN military analyst, Colonel Rick Francona, also Jason Johnson and Ana Navarro, two of our best political minds out there. So I'm going to start with you, Colonel Rick, because John Kerry, during his testimony, said that it is, I'm going to read the quote here. He said, "It is the threat of force to hold Assad accountable that has motivated others to talk about credible solutions." And by credible solutions, he meant this plan. Is he right?
Yeah, I believe so. I'll give the Secretary credit there that it was his remark that triggered this, but it was the looming threat of U.S. military action in Syria. The Syrians don't know exactly what we were going to do, but it was going to cause them a degradation of their forces. And, you know, if you believe Secretary Hagel, I'm sure General Dempsey is making that point that we were going to cause, you know, deterrence and degradation in their forces. The Syrians don't want that. They want to be able to continue to prosecute this civil war to their own benefit without our, what they would call, interference. So I look at this as a positive development, but I'm very worried that this is just a tactic on the part of the Syrians to delay this. We're gonna see from the Syrians what we saw from the Iraqis, just obfuscation and agree to talk about this. How do we set up the protocol? We're going to be talking for months just how to do this, let alone doing it.
Right, and the Secretary of State acknowledged that. In fact, he went on to say, you know, lawmakers, if you support a military strike on Syria, this will button this up. Syria will have to accept this deal because now it knows the United States is quite serious. Jason, is that going to happen? That's the big question, right?
I think it's going to happen in the Senate. It was never going to happen in the House. This is like, you got to put your foot on the gas right now. If we've got the Syrians and the Russians coming to the table, the Russians who for years have tried to block any action on Syria, the Syrians who pretty much denied that they had chemical weapons until this attack, now is not the time for the U.S. Congress to back off. So I think it is going to happen in the Senate, but when that vote actually occurs may have to do with when this deal gets cut.
Yeah, it was supposed to happen, what, tomorrow? Now they've delayed it because they're interested in this diplomatic solution. And isn't that a good thing, Ana Navarro? Because that's what most Americans want.
Look, I think it's up in the air and it's yet to be seen. What we have seen right now is the most incoherent policy from this administration. What this does is buy time for the Syrians, and it also buys time for this administration that was heading towards a sure defeat in Congress if this was brought up to a vote. And I think it's absolutely essential that the Senate, that Congress include provisions now that demand that if Syria does not meet these conditions by a certain time, a time certain, very specified, then the U.S. will be able to strike. I think this may actually get more votes now than it would have before. But at the same time, we've got to, you know, we've got time and we've got to do what President Obama hasn't done in the last 2 years. We have got to keep trying to change the momentum on the ground, which means arming the rebels, supporting the rebels.
Okay, so Colonel Francona, let's talk about that. John McCain still wants to arm the rebels, but he also came out and says doesn't really trust Syria, doesn't really trust Russia, because we don't know, because he believes what you just said, that this is just something to delay things so that Russia and Syria can figure out what to do. So what is the answer?
Well, there's two different issues here, and Anna, you know, brings up the point that, you know, this is to avert a U.S. strike and degrade their chemical capabilities. So right now we're talking about stopping Syria from using chemicals. No one is addressing the real problem is how do you stop the Syrian civil war? Everybody wants a diplomatic solution to that, but that's a much bigger problem, and I think we're not really addressing it. And I think that changing the momentum on the ground is a good thing. We've been talking about this for 2 years now, but we really haven't done anything. The president said last time that when the Syrians used chemical weapons, we were going to start arming the rebels. But we haven't done it yet, and we haven't given them the right weapons. So this is two different issues, and hopefully this will conflate them into one. We need to address this overall problem, not just the chemicals.
Okay, so the president is to address the nation tonight, Jason. And in light of what the colonel said, will the president make it easier for the American people to understand exactly what's going on? Will he talk about the bigger picture in that region?
Yeah, I think so. And now it's going to be easier for him to do so. We're at the 1-yard line here. I mean, the president can say, we're almost there. We've got everybody else on board. Now all we have to do is make sure that Congress supports this action, because it is a wider issue. It's not just chemical weapons. It's also doing something about this flood of refugees. It's also finding the proper rebels to arm. We do know there are al-Qaeda elements. We do know that the Syrian revolution or the Syrian civil war right now is not really a coherent whole. So I think if the president sort of gives us a little bit of a history lesson, that'll assuage a lot of the concerns in Congress and make this moving forward a much easier, and I've always thought it was a fairly coherent policy.
Okay, so Anna, how important is the president's speech tonight? Because the world will be watching, not just people in the United States, the world will be watching for some coherent, strong message from President Obama.
I think it's very important because we haven't heard a coherent, strong message from President Obama or actually his administration so far. I think the American people want to hear it. I think it's important for the stature of the United States worldwide. Yesterday, I spoke to congressmen who had been in that classified hearing. They told me they left there with more answers than questions. They told me that hearing could have been conducted by the Keystone Cops. So for once, there's got to be some clarity, some strategy. There's got to be strength, determination, and the president has got to make the case as to why this is relevant to the U.S., to the people of the United States of America. He hasn't done that yet. I hope he takes this chance tonight to do so.
Retired Air Force General Rick Francona, Jason Johnson, Ana Navarro, thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You could watch President Obama's